Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back again with Ronnie Feldman for another episode of the award-winning Creativity and Compliance. For those of you who didn't notice, check out the incredibly cool new cover art that we premiered today. And we have a great guest today, and Ronnie is going to introduce her.
This is because Tom couldn't pronounce her last name, and neither could I. Hey, this is Virginia, former compliance officer for Roche and Agilent Technologies. I've known Virginia for years. She's a creative individual who so excited to have on because she takes the whole concept of being creative and empathetic and interesting about these very important subjects, and it's made her very successful. Virginia, how do you say your last name?
It's MacSuibhne.
Yeah, it is. Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show. We're excited to have you here.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here with you guys.
So I knew of you when you were at Roche, but I don't think we actually connected till you were at Agilent, and I got to know your team, who's also been on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll just start off by just asking you, tell me a little bit about your philosophy about being creative in your approach to training and communications, or in the role in general. Let's start with maybe your philosophy towards what's made you successful.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a brand, whether that's your personal brand or your program brand. And so having done this now, both establishing programs as the first compliance officer and even compliance attorney at Roche, to then taking a program and inheriting it that already existed at Agilent. For me, my brand has always been about authenticity. And so I try to think about what that looked like in practice. And so in practice for me, it really looks like showing up with clear, easy, actionable guidance sprinkled with fun. And that's just part of how I like to engage. The reason that fun is so important to me, I have a chronic pain disorder. And so I spend most days in pain, and most people would be shocked to hear that. But so when I'm not feeling terrible, or when I'm feeling terrible, leaning into the joy and the fun part of it is really a nice counterbalance to me. Maybe it's the superpower I got by having this disorder. I'm not sure, but it's made me really particularly aware of the need for it. And then when I put it out there, the response I get back has made me just want to double down and really find even more creative ways to engage with.
So I love the phrase clear, easy, actionable guidance with sprinkles of fun, because gosh, we're not trying to teach people to be compliance officers. We're teaching them to do their jobs more compliantly. And as Tom and I talk about pretty regularly, is the idea that there's the power of fun, being fun and interesting and creative and entertaining and sometimes funny, and it doesn't matter. Something that is authentic and interesting in you makes you more welcoming, approachable to them. I always feel like the most important thing for compliance is to be influential. We talk about all the little things that we're doing, but really, whether they learn anything or not, as long as they know that you are someone they can come and talk to, I think it's the most important thing.
1,000,000%. Like I always say, I want people to be able to look me in the eye and be like, I could ask her a question. I could call her. And if I make myself the subject of the joke, if I make it entertaining, you see the shark head behind me that lived in my office, and the shark head faced the outside. So when people would walk in the compliance officer's office, that's the first thing they would see, and they'd start laughing, right? And now you've automatically sort of engaged with people in a new way. And I've just continued to develop that. It's like you see the wall behind me. Well, putting people at ease is 100% our job, because I'm just trying to make sure they know they can ask me a question, that we can solve things together. And then I'm not scared. Like, I'm not the cops. I'm not the police. I'm not here to get them. I'm here to make their jobs easier. 1,000,000%. That's my goal.
So tell me, what are some of the, I guess, either examples or strategies that you've used to put people at ease or to bring joy and fun into the work? What are just some thoughts that come to mind that might be examples for people to hear about?
Yeah, first, I think it's everything, right? It's how you show up in everything. It's about creating that brand. It's what your office looks like behind you. It's what your communications look like. In our new hire newsletters, I would sign a big pink heart on the new signature from me, right, as the compliance officer. I don't know a lot of compliance officers do that, but when we would integrate new businesses, mine had a big heart next to it, right? Trying to send the message that it's different, right? I'm not what you might expect from a compliance officer. You've probably seen a code of conduct that you're not going to get what you expected. So I'm big into infographics. I don't think people are going to read 60-page policies. I am big into redlining policies and making them as short as possible. Hopefully you can take a look at Agilent's new standards of business conduct. I think it's a great reflection. We just released it this week, although I'm no longer there. I do think of it as my baby still, and it's really sort of a redo of what I call your grandfather's code of conduct, right? It really is tailored and designed and written. The words are chosen very carefully in a way to try and touch people's hearts and minds. I don't need them to know everything. I need them to know, though, also what they can do. And I find a lot of compliance policies start with no. Here, like it's the first 15 pages are what you can't do. I always try to start with why is this important? And then what can you do next? And then what are the watchouts and who to call after? Like, I think it's providing a framework that people can know what to expect. And what they should expect from me is I'm going to tell them what they can do first. I'm here to make the business work, not to stop it. And then if something goes wrong, I'm here on their side. Like, I'm here to help. I think that's the message I'm trying to provide. And it can be done in different ways. It's everything from what you wear to what you say to how you write things to what graphics you choose to put on things and what you say no to. I've told my business, hey, you don't have to do that. Why are you thinking you need all of these things? I don't think you need that for this law. And they've said to me, you're the first compliance person who've ever said we don't need all of that. I'm really trying to scale for purpose.
It's pretty great. So you should take an improv class with me one time, because the rule yes and is, it's very much in line with what you're suggesting, which is even if the conclusion is that there's something that they can't do, when people hear no all the time, it stops action. They stop listening. So the idea of using a yes as an acknowledgement, I hear you, I understand what you're trying to do, is your yes. The and is a bridge to, hey, have you thought about these things? And then you're off solving problems together, is a way to kind of, even if you end up at a no eventually. So I love what you're saying. Also the idea about, I just did a webinar the other day and we were talking about the fact that I tend to focus on training and communications, but really it's every touch point that you have with employees, what your code looks like, how your policies are written. I love the idea of more graphics, right? A little simple, actionable graphics on what you can do, as well as the communications that you push out, the videos, the memes, the contests, and what the training looks like. Let me ask you one more question before we let Tom jump in, but are there other examples of, so you mentioned the infographics, showing up in person with the business and being helpful and supportive when you're on your one-on-ones. Are there some interesting creative communications that you've put out, or different trainings that you've used, or techniques that you use along those lines that might be interesting to highlight?
One of the things that I find is sort of a core concept in compliance programs is the travel and expense policy. And it's usually old and it's usually outdated, and people usually have questions about it. So at Agilent, there were actually 10 policies. And I said, no one's going to understand this. Like, I had to draw a diagram myself to figure out what the rules were. And I was like, that's not how we engage people. That's not going to get people's attention. And even though it wasn't like in the traditional scope of what are the 7 elements and what are the things I'm worried about, I knew I could get a quick win if I helped to simplify it. So I volunteered to take all 10 of them and turn them into something more meaningful, right? And say, listen, if I'm traveling, I need to know all of the things that go along with travel. If you put expenses somewhere else, I'm going to think that policy is done and I may not look there. Like, why would I know to go to these policies? They're really trying to simplify and clarify. And then we sent out messages to people and said, what are the top questions you have. We called the procurement team. What are the questions that you get all the time about expense policies that you're always answering? And we made sure to build that into the training as what you could do. If those are the questions people are asking, you need to address them in the policies. And I think that's one of the things people sort of get wrong about policies is they think they can't change, or they put this like generic line in there about like exceptions by vice presidents. Like, if any vice president can sign an exception, then it's not an exception. Pay attention to what people are asking and then rewrite the policy, adjust the policy, or do something. Now policies can be adjusted in 3 minutes and pushed back out, right? It used to be you'd have to update it in 72 places, but if you've got it right from a technology perspective, you can create a change very quickly. And one of the things we saw was that, for example, because COVID had hit, we hadn't adjusted our prices for people in terms of where they could, the meal, right? Our meals were just completely outdated. And I just said to the team, like, hey, look, here's the benchmarking and here's what people are saying to us. Can we get this right? And our business leaders were like, I had no idea, of course. And they moved it forward. And then you get that kind of momentum and you change that policy. You make the training 20 minutes. Nothing goes right longer than 20 minutes. And you make sure it's relevant in answering the right questions that people are asking. And then they come back for more, right? If they want to dig into another detail, then they'll ask you. But if you've made an hour training and you haven't touched the things they care about, they're never going to call you. Never. It just will never happen. And that's really, I think, the core of what we're doing here is we're trying to translate a bunch of laws that are sometimes not intuitive. Like, I think of the antitrust laws as the least intuitive thing. And we're trying to translate them for non-lawyers into their daily work. I also think about what trainings already exist and how can you embed your stuff in that training? Do you need another training? When I look at things, I'm like, okay, the salespeople already have these trainings. Let's build in the concept of compliance right there in that training rather than doing a separate compliance training. Then it's part of their daily work and they don't think of it as separate and different. I don't want compliance to be out here. I want it to be right in the middle of what they're doing. I've done everything from I always have walkout music when I come onto the stage. I always wear something interesting and unusual. I once wore a blow-up unicorn costume to a training. I hand out compliance bracelets everywhere, and I'm always surprised at how much people want them. I will do shameless things to get the attention of the business. They once had a conference in Dallas, and at the dinner, which I suggest you always go to. Don't just go to the conference and present and then go away. I went to the dinner and they had a mechanical bull. So I was like, compliance has to be the first to ride the bull. And I got on the bull first, right? Making it a joke. So many people came up to me after and wanted to ask me a compliance question.
It's great to just to put yourself out there, wearing a unicorn costume or just generally being a positive yes person and being interesting in your own authentic way. That goes such a long way. I often talk to people who contact us are sort of sometimes self-select because they want to do something fun and interesting, but they almost always say, like, we want to do something fun, but I'm not that creative or I'm not that interesting. And I want to go, bull crap. Yes, you are. You are when you're at home with your family and your friends. Like, we all have our own different way of being creative and fun. And I think the more we bring that into our work lives, the better that we'll be.
Yeah.
Top.
All the time. What makes you weird makes you wonderful. If you like Dungeons and Dragons, incorporate that. I'm a big Taylor Swift person, which is how the bracelets got created. And then people talk to me about that and then they turn it into something else. Don't leave your weird at home. Bring your weird and lean into it. I don't care if it's stuffed animals or you are hooked on Survivor. Like, you can always take a moment that you love and someone else will connect to it, even if that's not the thing they love. I don't need people to love Taylor Swift to know that I'm always going to walk out to a Taylor Swift song and that I have bracelets that I give away. Like, it's a connection point for people.
It's a good connection word. I think we had the name of the episode too. What makes you weird makes you wonderful.
Yep.
Tom, what thoughts are coming to mind for you?
I think you need to change your tagline to "Don't leave your weird at home."
There it is.
No, there's a couple of different strands I want to explore. And I want to go back to pretty early in your remarks, Virginia, because you said something along the lines of, I read the policies and of the first 20, 15 started with no, and it got worse.
Yep.
And so I spent about 10 minutes thinking about just that. And I never had thought about, when I write a policy, I just try to write it not as a lawyer.
Yeah.
I try to translate it into regular person speak. And I've never heard anyone say that about policies, but you're absolutely right. And then you guys went into this further conversation of, I think, Ronnie, you said it, the more times you say no, the less interest you have from the listener and where you're going to turn them off, et cetera. But we're doing that exactly with our policies. And for the business person who's trying to do the right thing, who's trying to read the policy and understand it, I thought if I made it readable enough, that was good enough. But I guess I'm hearing now that we're still saying no, and that we need to go back, and we're using the same policy language we used in the first decade of this century.
Yeah.
And I know that because I read a lot of policies, because the rules have been set for so long. So everybody knows what the rules are. And as a lawyer, once you got the form, you're good. You never have to think again. And it made me realize we do need to think, and we do need to put a different, not spin, but we need to reformulate how we communicate the information in the written format. Then you got to the accessibility part and riding the bull and all of that. My first question is a technical question. Do you have to pay a royalty for your walkout music? You can say that, answer that later. If not, why not? Not that I ever have that issue, ever. But you are presenting a package, the brand of Virginia, the brand of compliance, that it's not just, I have a door open. It's not just, I'm cool because I like Taylor Swift. It's everything. Everything you do, you're making yourself accessible. And if I could tie that back into the policy, if we can make the written policy not only accessible from a language perspective, but accessible from a tone perspective, that here's what you can do. There is a risk. If the risk gets so high, you have to have some second set of eyes on it, whether it's a VP, whether it's a CCO, whether it's a somebody. But we trust you to get those discretionary calls. And it just struck me when you said that about the policies, I realized you are absolutely right. Every policy starts with no. And that we are communicating to our customer base, i.e. our employees, we're wagging the finger at them in writing.
Yep.
And Ronnie talks about Dr. No from the land of no. If our policies are no, we're reinforcing that vision or version or whatever of us. I hope the listeners to this podcast will take this opportunity to reread their compliance policies. They may be a paragraph, they may be 2 paragraphs, but are you writing it as if, don't do this? And maybe you should think about rewriting it in a way that gives the but the flexibility to the end user, the customer, to have a user experience that's positive.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's all about the employee experience. That's our whole program, right? I think about that in everything I do. I think about it in the policy. I think about, are there charts? Are there things that are visually appealing in the way we put material together? When do you use bullet points? When do you use graphics? How do you do a version of it that's the 2-minute version versus the 20-minute version? But then I think about all the way through to our hotline, right? So if you're calling the helpline, I think it's probably your worst day at work. Okay, so what's the user experience going to be? And so when I rethought that through, I said, great, I want it to be as easy as possible on the front end. I don't want to ask 15 questions. I don't want them to tell me where they are and what city. I need them to just tell me what happened, and I need to figure out the rest on the back end. I don't need them to categorize it. We always used to start with, is it HR? Is it workplace services? I don't need them to know. I need them to tell me what happened and why they think it's important, and just give me enough information that I can start the detective work. I think it's how much burden you put on an employee, do the work to figure out, can they do this? What should they do? How to do this? The easier you make that, the lower you make the barrier for them to tell you something, the better off you're going to be. You can follow up, you can ask questions. But don't start by asking people to jump through a bunch of hoops to get to you, or they won't. They'll just stop, not because they are trying to do the wrong thing, but because you've made it hard. And they have hard jobs all day, just like you have a hard job all day. They have a day job. And if they're reaching out to you, there's a reason. So make it easy, make it accessible, make it joyful as much as you possibly can, especially when it's a difficult topic. If they think they can come to you, if they think that you're a human, if they think that you care, that's what you need to communicate. And it's in everything you do. Every document reflects you. Every training reflects you. Every single thing you put out from your website reflects your program. And so how can you pull it all the way through? And when people tell me they're not creative, I have no space for that, partly because the minute you start having a conversation like this, they start giving you 10 ideas, right? And so if you think you're not creative, use the community. The compliance community is the best community I've ever met. Ask someone else, call someone and brainstorm. I have people send me notes all the time about stuff they want me to put on a mug or a sticker. They're not looking for credit. They're just looking, right, to make this more enjoyable. So use your network for that. If you think you're not creative, you're wrong, but there's plenty of people who will help you innovate. And that's what a team is for also.
Yeah, it reminded me that there are members of your team at Agilent who created some contests where they got employees involved. So just simply by putting a concept out there, hey, let's change the lyrics of a song and make it about a compliance. And then they get employees to be the team that helps generate. It doesn't require you to be hilarious and innovative. You just have to sort of put yourself out there and get others involved.
So when we had superheroes as our compliance week theme, I had people draw a compliance superhero. I've had people do race cars. I've had people send us lyrics for things. I've had people send us ideas. People love to be involved. And we did a contest. We do a Pets of Privacy campaign where people could submit a picture of their pet and we'd put it on an infographic. And then we'd tell a little story about their pet alongside. People love their pets more than love their family. And I have to say, that's the thing that engages them. So engage people that way. I could have never gotten 600 people to send me pictures of their pets. And we just made it easy. And then we would put them up and we would generate them repeatedly. And people loved seeing that. And then they tell other people, that's my pet. And then we found out people have weird pets like ducks and things. It's something that you can connect with people about. And then I would be on calls and people would be like, oh, I'm going to show you. And that's how we start the call. Everything goes better from there when someone starts by saying, I want to connect with you about my pet or about Taylor Swift or about Dungeons and Dragons or whatever it is, because that's how I think of you when I think of compliance.
Quick question. So there's a lot of great, it's funny, this conversation went slightly different than I thought it was going to go, but I picked up a lot of things. We'll summarize at the end. But so have you had what can you tell people who may get pushback from, you're in the enviable position maybe of being at the compliance officer level. There's a lot of people who want to do something more creative, but they get a little pushback. So can you maybe share a little bit about how you've navigated winning people over with some of these ideas? Because you will get some people who don't quite get it, and we need to build a better business case because these are better solutions. So any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So I often get pushback from my legal team. So my legal teams are usually the first to say to me, Virginia, that's not very professional. Virginia, are you sure you want to do that? And what I come back to them with is, here's the response we got from marketing. 50 people from sales responded to that, which we'd never gotten that response. Here's the number of hits we got on the website the day before and the day we did this. And when you can show them the data, and even if it's just the commentary that you get from people, I think it's helpful. And I always just try to say, hey, you may not get it, but you're not my target audience in legal. You guys are here to help manage the rules. I'm here to help manage the employee experience of the rules. And so not everyone is going to get it. And that's okay. Any reaction is still a reaction. I'm just as happy for people to be like, oh my gosh, she's a lot. Yes, I am. And I try to be really clear. This is who I am and who I show up as. So not for every company, right? But I'm doing this in healthcare spaces. So I think it could be for every company, but it may not be what you want. And that's okay. But I think it's about if you understand that employees, right, are your biggest commodity and your biggest resource. And my goal is just to engage them in whatever way. Some things fail, right? But I learn from them and I get a response. And when they go right, they really go right. And that's what it's all about. It's about the feel of the program to people because I 100% know if the DOJ walked in our offices, someone would say something about compliance because they'll remember. Even if they don't agree with the way I delivered it, they will remember something differently.
Tom, do you have some thoughts on how to summarize or wrap up? I have some thoughts as well, but I'm curious what you're thinking.
I'm thinking that we have covered, you and I have been doing podcasts for 6 years maybe, and we've covered territory that in this podcast we've never covered. And we've done it in a way that is refreshing, new, and gives everyone who listens to this, including the hosts, different ways to think about the presentation of our thoughts, our products, our goals, whatever that might be. And that the branding of compliance, I write about 360 degrees of compliance, but what Virginia's talking about is light years beyond that. And that it is making compliance accessible. And Ronnie talks about making it entertaining, but if it's entertaining, you'll remember it. The audience will engage with you. But Virginia, frankly, I'm hearing you take it to a level that Ronnie and I have never taken it. And it's just stunning to me to hear this. And I really hope our listeners, if they get nothing else out of it, go reread your policies. I'm going to say that one more time. And this is just great stuff. So thank you.
So let me jump in and just do a quick summary of what I'm hearing, and then we'll see if you have any other final takeaways. But there's a couple things you said actually when we were chatting about doing this that I think came through. But you talked about being interesting and interested, which I love that phrasing. So be interesting and be interested in them. Be caring and enthusiastic are another great phrases. I go back to your simple, easy, simple, easy, actionable guidance with sprinkles of fun is great. One of the things I'm taking away is really focusing on the user experience. It's all about the user experience. That really resonated with me because we're not teaching them to be compliance officers. You may need for legal reasons to have them acknowledge that they know the policy. What they really need is to know what to do, which could be a graphic, could be a song. It could be a simple, like 3 bullet points. Like we need to be focusing on what they need to do and make that as the lowest barrier to entry into that learning as possible. Love your example about the hotline on that too. What are we trying to do here? We're trying to get them in their most vulnerable point to share something. Make it easy. Make compliance simple, easy. Guidance with sprinkles of fun is so great. You also said, I wrote down, be yes people. We got to be positive. And bring the weird. Love. It's a good way to bring the weird. So anyway, that was sort of my takeaways. Do you have any other sort of thoughts or guidance that you want to leave people with?
I think a lot of this work is detective work, right? It's about figuring out what people are doing, where they're doing it, and how you can fit into your program. And so be curious, ask them questions, ask them what they struggle with during the day, ask them what they don't understand. I've had people be like, oh, the policy says, and then I've looked at the policy and been like, the policy's wrong, so let me fix it. I can't tell you how much joy people get when you do something like that for them. And then they're going to come back. So it's find a win, find a way in with teams so that they want to come back to you because this is not a solo business, right? Compliance is about engagement with the business. And the more you're engaged with them, the better off the program is going to be.
Tom?
With that, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. I'm going to say this now, Virginia. I hope we can continue this conversation on another podcast. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if any of our listeners wanted to connect with you or find out any more information about any of the topics we've touched on, what might be the best place or places for them to go.
Yeah, please reach out to me. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. My last name is MacSuibhne. So if you can find me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have an Etsy shop. It's smqshop.etsy.com, where you can find some fun stickers and other materials that you might be able to incorporate in your program. So I'd love if you check that out, but I'll be at a lot of the conferences this year. You'll see me at HCCA and SCCE. I'd love to connect there as well. And I'm always happy to generate ideas with people.
Virginia, on behalf of Ronnie, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with us. We generally let Ronnie take us home, so take us home, Ronnie.
Bring the weird, everybody. It'll be helpful to both you and to the people around you.
Absolutely.